We are about to experience some of the biggest changes we have ever seen on planet Earth. This particular eclipse is so powerful because there's these lineup of all these planets on one side of the nodal axes, a Kalasarpa yoga. We are coming to a really beautiful time in our evolution. Except for the next 6 months, it's going to be distorted. Sometimes things have to blow in order for people to wake up. We are evolving and consciousness is opening up. In about 10,000 years from now, we'll be at the highest point. Nikola Tesla said, when you understand the meanings behind the numbers 3, 6, and 9, you understand the workings of the universe. Vedic astrology does this. Sacred geometry. That's what it all essentially is. When you pass to the other side, you become one with everything. You're not going to be able to understand what the other side is like while you're still in body form. But here is what I can tell you. Every year, there's 2 solar eclipses. They're always 6 months apart. And what they are is when the sun and the moon come together with Rahu and Ketu. And what Rahu and Ketu are actually points in space where really there's just a lineup between the sun, the moon, and Earth. But what it actually is where the moon intersects the ecliptic, which is the apparent path of the sun around the Earth. So where the moon hits the ecliptic going upward, it's Rahu. Where it hits the ecliptic going downward, it's Ketu. So they're points in space that really are about the lineup of where the sun, the moon, and the nodes are the Earth lining up with them all. So then when we have a full moon or a new moon, this is what an eclipse is. So it's really that, we have a full moon and a new moon every month. But when the Earth lines up with these points in space, that's when the eclipses happen. And they happen 6 months apart. But this particular eclipse that we're talking about that just happened March 29th is so powerful because there's these lineup of all these planets along with the eclipses. And the eclipses are the sun and the moon is together with Rahu. And what I'm saying is there's Venus that's lined up with it, there's Mercury that's lined up with it, and there is Neptune that is lined up with it. This is a huge big deal. And hours after this eclipse, Saturn lined up with it, having this huge stellium. Stellium means 3 or more planets together, lined up in Pisces. Remember, I'm a Vedic sidereal astrologer, so the lineup is happening in Pisces sidereally. And this is huge because Pisces is the end of the zodiac. It's the end of the signs. So this is like the end of something before a new beginning. This is a really exciting time to be alive, I think, because everything's about to change. And so everything's about to change from here on out till the next eclipse, which happens in September. So you see, this eclipse, it's not like the day of the eclipse that the world changes, but it sets the tone for the next 6 months till the next eclipse. And I've got to say, we are about to experience some of the biggest changes we have ever seen on planet Earth.
What are some of those changes? Because it seems like when I tune into what's happening from some of your work, it seems like we're going through, like, there's this potentially a lot of conflict, a lot of challenge, a lot of ruffling of the feathers, but
Right.
underneath it, it's sort of like this subtext of peace is being brought forward. I found that really like, huh? Can you explain
Yeah.
what's going on?
Yes, let me explain because, everybody, I go through all the astrology. Everyone wants to know, what does it mean? What's it mean for me individually? Let me get into this. This is serious stuff. So, Saturn and Neptune are now together and they're in Pisces. And this is like a change, a revolution of consciousness. And I know you've heard this from a lot of spiritual seers that the consciousness is truly changing on planet Earth. And Saturn and Neptune coming together aren't all that rare, but in Pisces it is. it's been so long since it's been in the sign of Pisces. Pisces is a spiritual sign. It's about spirituality. It's about what's beyond this world. It's, what started Christianity. If you look at the symbol for Pisces, it's the fish. And 2,000 years ago, when we entered into the age of Pisces, it started all the Christianity, the birth of Christ. And so now we have this big revolution with Neptune and Saturn. What is Saturn? Saturn's reality. Saturn is responsibility, reality, and it deals with getting the job done. Saturn's hard work. And what I like to say is it's the heavy feeling of responsibility, of things having to be right, having to be corrected. Saturn's karma. And so, what is Neptune? Neptune is the ethereal, what lies beyond this world. And sometimes it can deal with illusions. And when you think of Neptune, sometimes it can bring on cults, major cults, where people want to, be led and follow spiritual teachings, but they don't want to think for themselves in a cult. But now it's a time of empowerment where people are waking up to what Saturn is with spirituality. So if Neptune's spirituality and Saturn is reality, then we're waking up to the reality of the truth. And there's no more illusions. There's no more of the lies and the delusions that have been rampant for so many years, so many years. I always
Sorry, just to interrupt. Is that because Saturn is guides and governs Aquarius, and then Neptune guides and governs Pisces? Is that what I'm picking up from what you're saying?
You're picking up correct. Saturn
Please
actually
can
rules both Capricorn and Aquarius. And you're right about the Aquarius. Most Western astrologers think that it rules Aquarius, that Uranus rules Aquarius, excuse me. But Saturn in the Vedic system rules Aquarius. So right on. And so Aquarius is technology and the future. And that's another thing. We are moving towards the age of Aquarius out of Pisces. So that's the other thing that maybe you're thinking of with Saturn being like that. But Saturn being with Neptune is going to wake up the truth, the reality, and the illusions mainly. And I think it's also going to bring people back to their spirituality. This is so important because so many people have been lost spiritually. And I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about spirituality. In my book, they're different. Religion is, here's my definition, and it's different for everyone, but my definition is religion's kind of like searching for God outside of ourselves, where spirituality is finding God within ourselves. And that's where we're headed right now. We're all finding the divine within ourselves and finding that empowerment to be led by our own truths and not by others. That's what the true spirituality of what this conjunction and eclipse is bringing forth for the next 6 months. So there's going to be a big awakening of people. Now, another thing that just happened sidereally is, aside from this eclipse, is Uranus just changed signs. When the outer planets change signs, they depict a conscious awareness. In other words, they change consciousness. People start to see things from a different vantage point, and the evolution of awareness on planet Earth is higher. We're able to conceive and understand concepts that we couldn't before. This is where the outer planets take in, because the outer planets really do rule the collective unconsciousness. So it's like, when these big ideas come into being, it's like not one person gets them. Many get them all at the same time. That's why you're going to find that discoveries happen all over the world, the same discoveries, because people are tuning into this information that is now available for people on planet Earth. So you're going to find also some amazing technological advances that are about to come within the next 2 years. It's going to blow your mind, especially around the area of healing. Wait and see. It's already happening because I believe healing is really going to evolve out of the fact that if we change our vibration and our frequency, we can heal disease. And this is what's about to come forth with, and what I can tell is where the planets are, that they're opening up this new information that we've never had before. And the planet is going to change by leaps and bounds. We're just on the cusp of this. Things are about to really transcend and change. And it's time. We all need this transition and change because we've kind of been in the dark for a while, kind of been in limbo, kind of been in a place where there hasn't been a lot of progress. And now it's going to jumpstart. Wait and see this eclipse. And one more thing I might add about this eclipse that's very interesting is that both Mercury and Venus are retrograde. And I love to talk about the cycle of Venus being retrograde because it has this amazing cycle where in its process, it forms a pentagram in all of the retrogrades that it does within a period of 8 years. So in 8 years, every time it goes retrograde, it forms this point that forms this pentagram. And what I find is that Venus is the planet of peace. Now, we don't seem to have very much peace in the world right now, but here is what I see predicted, especially since Venus is tied up with this eclipse, with the sun, the moon, Rahu, Neptune. Venus and Neptune and Mercury are going back and forth, and they're hitting Rahu. Rahu, by the way, is the north node of the moon. In Western astrology, Rahu is the north node and Ketu is the south node. This eclipse is taking place with Rahu. 6 months from now, it will take place with Ketu. But with Rahu, this is expansion of big, big things. And going back to the Venus retrograde, I did an extensive research project on Venus retrograde for my students in my school. And what I found is in the process of Venus going retrograde, it goes from an evening star to a morning star. And this was a huge big deal in the ancient times because all of a sudden Venus would disappear from the night sky for about 8 days. It's interesting the number 8 and 9 that comes into play here, but it would disappear for about 8 days and then reappear as a morning star. And in ancient times, they said when Venus becomes a morning star, things on Earth become crazy. And this isn't all that rare, though. Let me just say this, but this is what the ancients perceived. It is a more intense time. But what I found is if you follow that cycle of Venus, every 8 years, Venus returns exactly to the same place it was 8 years ago, even the same degree that it was, the same month, the same day, and the same degree. This is how perfect the cycle of Venus is. But what I have found that right before it goes retrograde, when you count around 8 to 9 months later, that there were declarations of peace. There were all sorts of peace treaties that started. And right now, with all the war and things going on right now, yes, it's going to come to a culmination point. Let me just tell you right now, there is going to be some major things within the 6 months period, but it is going to lead to the need for peace. And Venus cycle predicts in my book that there's going to be peace coming about by the end of the year, probably I'd say by October. But something's going to blow up that's going to cause this to really come to a point where we say, enough is enough. We've got to find peace. And this whole Venus cycle to me represents the evolution towards peace. We have so many things going on, Amrit. I can't believe with the Venus retrograde, Mercury retrograde, and oh, there's another thing. Now that Saturn has joined forces into Pisces, we have something else that I don't know if you've ever heard of when Rahu and Ketu, all the planets come on one side of the nodal axes. It's called a Kalasarpa yoga. Have you heard of this?
I was going to ask you about this today. Yeah,
Yeah.
something about the energies going out of control.
Exactly. So this isn't all that rare, but when it does happen, yes, everything, it's like, okay, Rahu and Ketu are pretty much our destiny. In a birth chart, Rahu represents your future and your destiny and your desire, where Ketu is your past, and it's what you've already developed, what you've already done, your talents. But together, really, if you think about it, the future and the past equates to our present. And so Rahu and Ketu deal with our destiny and where we're headed. So therefore, when all the planets are on one side, and people can have this in their birth chart, by the way. As a matter of fact, I'll explain that in a minute too. But when all the planets are on one side, then this means we're trapped in a certain destiny and we have no way out. We have to fulfill the promise of what's already in action and occurring. This is definite. So we just entered into the Kalasarpa yoga. It will be in effect till about the third week or so of July. When Mars breaks it, Mars will move outside of this pattern. Now, it's true, though, that every 2 weeks, when the moon goes through all the 12 signs, it will break this for 2 weeks at a time. But still, we're in the Kalasarpa yoga, basically till July, meaning everything, there's a certain destiny that has to come out and be fulfilled. And people that are born with it, I always love to tell them that their lives will have incredible, beyond belief highs and lows. And, they go, well, how can I get out of it? You really can't. Your life will have these highs and lows. And I can speak for this because I have it in my chart. But what I can say for this, that is the best thing that people can hear that have this in their chart, is that when you reach a low point, you will always rise to a much higher position than you were before. And you will hit low points. Yes. And I always tell my students, if you want to know a classic example of a true Kalasarpa yoga, look at Donald Trump's chart. All the planets are on one side of Rahu and Ketu. And what life has not had the most extreme highs and lows? And has he not reached a higher position than he did before? Incredibly beyond belief, I think. I think it's a classic example so people can understand how extreme Kalasarpa yoga is.
Hey there, inspired souls. I wanted to take a moment to thank all of you that are subscribed to this podcast. Everything you see around here is powered and empowered by your subscription to this channel. Thank you so much for your incredible love and support. And to all of you that haven't yet subscribed, I invite you to please take a moment. As I'm saying the word subscribe, the subscribe button below is lighting up in the colors of the Inspired Evolution. Please hit that subscribe button, hit the bell notification icon, join the movement, spreading love, positivity, and wisdom like this around the world. Thank you so much in advance for doing so. Yeah, I mean, quick little sidebar, because you were talking about healing earlier. You experienced a healing miracle in the Philippines. Can you tell us that story?
This was many years ago. It was actually in 1984 that I was told that there was a healer, a psychic surgeon in the Philippines that could heal the incurable. And, you hear this kind of stuff all the time. You don't know whether to believe it. But I took it in stride and I thought, I want to experience this because I knew people that went there and they were cured of cancer and incurable diseases. So my parents at the time, my mother had clogged arteries. My father had severe arthritis, and I was always determined to find a healing for them. So we went on the journey. This was 1984. There was no internet, no computers, and really not even telephones where I could call to find out where I was going and if the people were really and truly there. So we went on blind faith. Let's go try it. I was told to go to a certain hotel. This hotel was called, I remember it was called the Sulu Hotel. And it was such a cute hotel. I got to say this because I didn't in the video. You would go into the restaurant, and one side of the restaurant was the underwater of a pool, and divers would go in and do all these acrobatics underwater for you while you were eating. It was so cute. I love that. You never see things like this anymore. Anyway, so the Sulu Hotel, I was told to go there, go to the coffee shop, and there would be a lady there named Josephine, and she could find a way for me to get to Sister Josephina, who was the healer in the Philippines. So went on blind faith, went to the Sulu Hotel in Quezon City, 30 miles out of Manila. And she said, I can arrange for my son to take you to see Sister Josephina tomorrow. Be here tomorrow at this time. And we did. He showed up in a Jeep, and this Jeep took us through the jungles of the Philippines, no roads. And I mean, it was treacherous, head beating all over the ceiling of the Jeep and all over. Oh my God, it was a bumpy ride. So anyway, we get there. And there is this like little chapel in the middle of the jungle. There is no floors, dirt floors, no wind. I mean, the windows were just openings. And I remember like little lizards on the side of the wall, and cows walking around, sticking their heads into the little chapel. I mean, it was very archaic. It was like old. And so we walk in the little chapel, and there's Sister Josephina. There was people from all over the world, but there weren't that many people there waiting for healings. And she explained to us that this is how the healing works. It's like a bucket of water. The skin is like the surface of the water. I'm going to reach in through the water and pull out the diseased tissue. And when I remove my hand, the skin will come back together just like the surface of the water does. And I was like, okay, I really didn't understand exactly what it was going to look like, but that was the explanation. So we're there, and my mother goes first, and she has this enormous list of her ailments, right? And it was so funny because Sister Josephina just kind of went, I could tell she already knew what was wrong with her. It had nothing to do with it had nothing to do with that big long list, because we all have to know that disease comes from the emotional body. And I am sure that Sister Josephina just tuned right into the emotional body. What causes the disease? What is really at the basis, the cause that's causing the dis-ease in the body? So she allows me to stand there while my mother's being worked on and look where her hands are going. And I kid you not, when she did her hands, it did go penetrate into the body. And I could see into her neck where she was working on her, all the tissue inside and the veins. And I just about passed out. Because, at first thought, you think, how in the world is that skin going to come back together when it's wide open? Is she going to die here on the table? So she pulled her hand away, and she brings out, I swear it was like this string of black beads, and there's blood and black beads, and she dumps it in a bucket. I know it's gross, but then her skin, oh, I forgot to say, there was this wonderful, beautiful, like nun. She was dressed like a nun, and she was like from Northern Europe, someplace around there. And she assisted Sister Josephina in the healings, and she would wipe away where the blood was, and there was no incision, nothing. So I'm like, okay, this is weird. And she does a whole scan of her body, pulling strings out, pulling guts out, and all this blood and stuff, and then wiping it away. And I even took photographs of it all. She allowed me to take pictures. So then my father gets on the table, same thing, does the whole body, pulling things out and all of that. And then it's my turn. And I'm like, does this hurt? I don't know if this is going to hurt or what. So she starts on my stomach and she starts smiling real big. And I thought, what's that all about? And then she says, are you married? I said, yes. She says, do you have any children? I said, no. And then she smiles real big again. I thought, what is the deal with her? Am I pregnant or something? Well, okay. So I thought, no, I can't be pregnant anyway. So then she gave us this list of what not to do, what not to eat, what not to do. But here is the worst thing, that what we couldn't do. Let me remind you, we're in the jungles, no air conditioning, nothing. We could not take a bath for 3 days. And this was awful. So so my dad had been in World War II, and he actually was in the Philippines before, and he was in Baguio. Baguio's in the mountains, and there was a lovely, I think, a Hilton hotel. And so we were instructed to go rest for 3 days, just rest in vegetarian diet, drink a lot of water, and rest. So we went up to Baguio, and this is where the miracle really happened. So after the healing, we were so tired and we went to sleep. And I kid you not, we slept for 24 hours. And when we woke up, we were like shocked at what time it was, because it was the next day, this has never happened. But we had these vivid, vivid dreams of being in this place on the other side. And when I described it to my mother, she finished and said, yes, was this there? Was that there? And my dad said, yes, we were all three on the other side in the same place, describing it to a T in this vivid, vivid dream and experience. So that was mind blowing. And then my father's legs, which he had no circulation from his arthritis, were bright red, and he could walk completely normally. When we got back to the United States, my mother's arteries were completely clear that were clogged. The doctors had no explanation for this. And so then Sister Josephina left us with a serious note that she told us. She said, if you don't change what caused the disease in the first place, it will return. I can remove it, but you have to change. And my mother, with all of her negativity and all of her emotional, stuff, she didn't change. It did come back. My dad, same thing with his victim stuff. He didn't change, came back. But get this, I was 2 weeks pregnant when I was there and didn't know. And I thought that's what she was trying to tell me.
Yeah. Oh, what a
So that was
blessing.
my experience in the Philippines.
Wow, man, that is incredible. I mean, yeah, my brain's trying to process you standing there witnessing someone moving their hand into flesh and then pulling stuff out, and then no incision, blood. Oh my God. I'll process it after the episode. Yeah, my goodness. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's interesting, the concept of healing, and even as you're describing that, because there was some bits that needed to be removed, certain things that needed to be sort of effervesced to the surface. And it does seem like, back to what you were saying about what's currently going on between these eclipses, that's very much this time. Stuff is bubbling up to the surface, so this undercurrent of peace, back to our natural state, we can return.
Yes. And so back to this, everything is about to change consciousness and awareness. And like I said, there's going to be some new technologies out for remarkable healings. I think it's a time of healing. And everything in our life, whether it's global, we are here to heal. We're here to heal our awareness, our consciousness on the planet, inside and out. This is what life is all about. Astrology for me has given me enormous healing, because to be able to understand the cycles of the planets and how everything is interconnected and one, and how everything affects everything, is such a beautiful understanding. And this is really the divine in the spirit. This is all one. We are all connected in this way. The more we understand this, the more we heal. And I'll tell you what, if you're watching my YouTubes, I have another one that's going to come out with my connection with my best friend after she passed. And she came back and she communicated to me what the other side was like. And it's so interesting because one thing she told me, she says, first of all, you're not going to be able to understand what the other side is like while you're still in body form, because it's way beyond what you can understand with the matter of your brain and the way that the brain thinks. But she says, but here is what I can tell you. When you pass to the other side, you become one with everything. And she said, this is our natural state of being. To be separate in a body is so unnatural and is not our natural state. And therefore, when you feel separate in your body, not connected to everyone and everything, you're fearful, because you don't feel that support and that connection as we do when we're one with everything on the other side. So I thought that was a beautiful concept, because we really essentially can't get it here, but we have to understand it intellectually. And I think through our connection, when we do connect through meditation, through going within, connecting with our divinity within, we do feel a sense of that connection and unity of everything that is. And this is what brings healing. This is what's going to bring humanity together, instead of all this fighting and hatred that people have. And, it's so motivated by politics and the media and all of that. This is not our natural state of being. Our natural state of being is our connection to each and every one of us, and that we are all interconnected, and that we are all one. And this is what I see the ultimate healing on earth, that people are going to start getting it more and more this year. And sometimes things have to blow in order for people to wake up, because when things big do happen on the world, such as, catastrophic, terrible events, people pull together. People start developing that compassion, that oneness, that we are all one, and that we don't want others to suffer, and that we are going to do everything to come together and help one another. This will probably be in due part what this piece is going to be about towards the end of the year, because I know everything's going to get crazy. People are going to be full of fear. People are going to feel isolated and alone with everything that's about to happen in this world within the next 6 months. But what we have to understand is that people are going to wake up and come together. And believe it or not, I think in a year and a half, we will have a period of prosperity and unity more than ever on planet Earth. So we are coming to a really beautiful time in our evolution. Except for the next 6 months, it's going to be distorted. And I will say this too. The year of, and I don't want to get too far off of this, but the year of 2030 and 2031, oh my God, the astrology and the planets that are evolving and what's going to be happening then is going to be another wake-up call. You know what I have to say? I think planet Earth is simply a place where we come to grow and learn spiritually. It's never going to be a utopia here, but there's these cycles of of ups and downs. And the astrology and the planets will prepare us for when things are going to go up or down, the cycles, when we're entrapped in the Kalasarpa, or when we're free, when we can make decisions for ourselves. But remember this, I think essentially what we're all learning here is that we're all connected, we're all divine, And one thing for sure that I think we're going to evolve more, where we can understand these concepts more. More people are coming together. And sometimes it takes catastrophic events to bring us together. And then the cycle goes on. But the evolution of really the whole processional cycle, we are growing in consciousness. Because if you go back, people say, oh, things are so horrible now. It's the worst it's ever been. No, it's not. No, it's not. Think about World War II and where the consciousness was there. That's so my whole point in saying this is I know things are not great right now, but we are in an evolutionary change and we are growing and we are getting better. We are at a much more elevated, advanced way of thinking than World War II or going back 2,000 years ago. 2,000 years ago was the darkest time on planet Earth. And in the whole precessional cycle, it takes 24 to 26,000 years to go through all the 12 signs of, like the age of Pisces, the age of Aquarius, and onward. So as we grow, in about 10,000 years from now, we'll be at the highest point. But my point is we are evolving, we are growing. And yeah, we have it's like back and forth, but we are evolving and consciousness is opening up more so than ever before, especially right now as we evolve. Okay? Does that any questions with all of that?
I mean, well, one of the points, maybe not a question because there's so many questions that opens up in there. But one of the points I couldn't help but notice as you were talking about the other side and the healing component of it, even just hearing you talk about what you shared, there was a healing available in there to recognize that we're not alone because loneliness is this, it can be such a wound for people to carry.
Yes. And lately, ever since COVID, people are lonelier. And now we have all these devices in our phones. We're not connecting with people the way we used to. You go to a restaurant and you see people on their phones. What is that all about? It's time for us to come together and have human interaction. And what's really funny? I had a client today. He wanted to come in person, and I do so much on Zoom. And I said, of course you can come in person. This is what we all need to do. I mean, wouldn't it be great, Amrit, if we were here together in person? You definitely pick up on people's energies more. You gotta be in person. And people need to start having group meetings and coming together in person more so. I know we can't do it because we're on the other side of the world from each other. And this is the beautiful thing that we're able to do this. This is like amazing and fabulous that we are able to connect to everyone around the world. But when we can come together, especially with your family. Family is everything. We are here with certain people to grow, and family gives us a core basics of, of our roots, our foundations. Come together with our loved ones. Don't sit there on the phone when you're with your loved ones. I think it's so important that we come together with dinner and put our devices away and share our lives and open our hearts and laugh. This is life, and that will take away the loneliness that is destroying people's lives these days.
Profound. Absolutely. This podcast is brought to you by my one-to-one mentorship. The podcast is designed to inspire your evolution onwards, upwards, and inwards. And if you're ready to dive in even deeper and evolve your career, your leadership, and business in a conscious direction, and you believe that alignment to your purpose and your soul's direction is the only way to truly thrive into your highest potential, and right now you can feel that guidance, mentoring, and coaching would be of support, then my one-to-one mentorship coupled with our incredible conscious group masterminds is here for you. Thousands of people have evolved through my mentoring over the last 10 years. It is, after all, my highest calling, and here's what they have to say about how it's transformed their life.
Everything just kind of fell into place, and now I'm on a path that I actually believe in and I'm excited about, because I feel like I'm becoming my best self.
Over those 2 years, I have done so much. I can't believe where I am now. I'm thrilled where I am now. Not only was he a coach, but he became a divine presence in my life.
You can show up to Amrit with all sorts of chaos in your life and you leave feeling completely centered with some direction that is going to get you results. It's just magic when you're in coaching with Amrit. You just flow with it all.
I feel that I have access and connection to somebody who is deeply entrenched in my development.
If you're thinking about it, just do it. You won't regret it.
So if you're ready to dive in even deeper to take your inspirations and truly evolve, then make your way over to my website at amritsandhu.com. I'll put a link in the description below. You don't have to go it alone. There's one-to-one mentoring and an incredible community mastermind of conscious leaders, entrepreneurs, and people transforming their careers and business into full alignment with their soul's highest calling, creating a life that inspires them on the deepest level, living into their greatest impact. Make your way over to my website, amritsandhu.com, send me a personal message and let me know why this is right for you right now, and apply to work together. Let's take your business, career, and direction practically to the next level. Link to amritsandhu.com in the video description below. I look forward to seeing you there. Joni, you wrote a book dedicated to 2024 and 2042 all the way through, based on your previous book, Rahu and Ketu.
Yes.
You could be writing about anything. Why was it so important to write about what's coming up in 2024 and 2042 all the way through?
Okay. Well, this is in here. I happen to have the book here. Here it is. World Predictions 2024 to 2042. What I did in this book, it is all about Rahu and Ketu because they are the connection of the sun, the moon, and the earth. What is more important than the sun, which gives us life, the moon that gives us that reflection at night when we sleep? And really, the sun and the moon are so symbolic of the mother, the father, the night, the day. It's that duality that our earth is all about. So when I talk about Rahu and Ketu, they go through a sign every 18 months. So by the time Rahu and Ketu, and they're exactly opposite, by the way. So, like I told you, on the ecliptic, one is the Rahu is the ascending point and Ketu is the descending point, but they're exactly opposite. So it's kind of like this axis, right? And as they go through a sign, it takes 18 months. And it takes them 18 and a half years to go through all 12 signs of the zodiac. So what I discovered when I was writing my book on Rahu and Ketu in 2017, I already told you the story, I'll make it brief, but I discovered that every time Rahu was in Gemini and Ketu was in Sagittarius, something catastrophic always happened. And so I started, this was 2017, and I noticed that it was coming up in 2020. So I went back, first it was 18 and a half years prior, it was 9/11, 2001. Rahu was in Gemini, Ketu was in Sagittarius. Then I took it back 18 and a half years from that point. And when Rahu was in Gemini, Ketu in Sag, it was the AIDS virus around 1982. Then I took it back 18 and a half years from that. 1963 was Kennedy's assassination. Then going back 18 and a half years prior to that was the bombing of Hiroshima. So I think I got your attention. It was 2017. I said, something's going to happen in 2020 that is going to change our life forever, because here we go again. So I wrote that book, and I wrote that in 17. And of course, we had COVID. So I thought, you know what? I better write this before the next cycle happens. And so I did. And so I took this all the way till 2038, when it will happen again, where Rahu will be in Gemini and Ketu will be in Sagittarius. And at that point in time, it's even more cataclysmic because Uranus, the planet of awakenings and change, is going to be with Rahu, with Mars, with Jupiter. Oh my God, something incredible will happen. So then I thought, the way that we make our predictions in astrology is we go back to the times before, just as I did every year that Rahu was in Sag and Ketu in Gemini. So I went back through all the different signs. That's what I did I did it briefly in my Rahu and Ketu book. This book, I went back in depth, in detail, every time historically when the nodal axis was in different signs. What happened in those periods of time previously, historically? So then I put it all together, looking at the future, what will happen. But what I kind of discovered in studying the nodes, and of course where Rahu and Ketu are, where the eclipses happen. That's why I call it the eclipses too. But what I discovered was whenever the nodal axes were in particular signs and they were conjunct the outer planets. Remember how I told you the outer planets will make shifts in consciousness and awareness in humanity? Well, I found this to be where the turning points of evolution and consciousness also changed, and with world events. So in this book, I tie up the three outer planets that typically weren't ever used in Vedic astrology, but I know that I had to use them because they rule the collective unconscious. They're not necessarily part of the Vedic scheme with an individual's chart in terms of what is happening physically. But the outer planets, when they are with your natal planets, in other words, the planets that are visible to the naked eye, when they're with your natal planets, they elevate that planet's awareness in whatever way that planet indicates. So I found the outer planets to be extraordinary in talking about consciousness. So then I went back and looked at world events when Rahu and Ketu was with these three outer planets and what evolved in historically. Therefore, I'm predicting it into the future, but there's another missing feature that seemed to cause everything to shift. In other words, when I'm looking at, well, Jupiter and Saturn are the social planets. They deal with the social events. In other words, what's going on in the economy? What's happening in world political, sociological events? This is Jupiter and Saturn. So when they're tied up with Rahu and Ketu, you get these enormous changes too with politics and the social economics, things like that. But the outer planets are revolutionary. They create the radical changes tied up with Rahu and Ketu, which are destiny, but the major trigger of predicting when something occurs is Mars. So Mars takes 2 years to go through the whole zodiac, so it will trigger these events. And so what I found was every time Mars came in, that was like, because the outer planets and Rahu and Ketu can be together for 18 months, right? Because Rahu and Ketu stay in a sign for 18 months. So how do you know within that 18 months when an event will actually happen? It's when Mars comes into the sign and triggers it, either conjuncts it or opposes it. I found that to be the trigger. And that happened at 9/11. Mars came in exactly. That happened with COVID, came in exactly when all the shutdowns happened, when we finally realized what was really happening in the world. And I went back and Mars triggered every one of these events. So I found it to be so exciting as an astrologer to find these cycles and these processes that gave me a handle on when I could make predictions. And yes, I'm not always going to be 100% right. No astrologer ever is. But these tools they really work. and working together with all my students in my university. We do research projects. We're starting to really hone in on when things are definitely about to happen. And if you followed my YouTube channel, I was able to predict so many events that have previously happened and possibly can happen. Now, as I said before, sometimes things can be averted, right? That's why I do this. I don't think things are just necessarily have to happen. And I go into my whole story. You've heard me a million times talk about Kennedy. I was around when President Kennedy was assassinated. And the night before he came to Dallas, where I live, a psychic came on TV. I was like in first or second grade, but I will never forget. Jean Dixon came on my black and white TV and begged Kennedy not to come to Dallas or he would be assassinated. I don't think she said it exactly like that, but she begged him not to go because he would have trouble. And the very next day, he was assassinated. I never, ever forgot that woman begging him not to go to Dallas. And I always thought, what if he listened to her? I'm not kidding you. This is what started my entire search and journey into astrology. I had to figure this out. And this is what I am trying to do with all of my research, my writing, everything that I do. My whole heart and soul is into astrology, not just because I want to be able to predict the future, because I want to avert things that are dire and are difficult. That's why I wanted to write about the year of 2038, not realizing in the process of writing this book, though, that I would find another date that was pretty cataclysmic, and that is around, I think, June or May in 2030. So that's another one to be on the lookout. But what if we could help prevent things through writing this book and helping mankind understand that? That's my purpose with all of this.
Inspired Soul Lumen Beings, you're obviously loving this podcast, and liking this episode is something you can do using the button below. So please do give the episode a like and a thumbs up. Now join in on the conversation below. We are covering so much ground here. I'm in awe of this conversation, touch wood. Jyotish, the study of light, the study of sacred geometry, 2024 to 2042, the 3 eclipses we're currently going through, healing, transformation. What is your biggest takeaway from today's episode? I'd love for you to join in on the conversation in the comments below. And she's likely to come back on in the future. So if you've got any other questions that have emerged from today's episode, leave them in the comments below. She's also quite active on YouTube. She might actually be replying to your comments to this video. And let me know what you're taking away from today's episode. Back to it. Wow, okay, so one of the things that I couldn't help but miss was just this concept of, I mean, maybe just because where we were in the conversation, but this concept of, do you see it all as sacred geometry? Like, there's so much pattern. You mentioned numbers earlier in the podcast as well, like these numbers 8, the numbers 9. It just seems like everything is just so much divine cosmic patterning. Like you said, Sagittarius, Gemini, and then Mars almost kind of like this trigger button, which sort of goes and things start to happen.
Yes.
Do you just see it so much as sacred geometry after a certain point?
Everything is numbers, everything is math. You know that. Absolutely 100%. When I started to calculate the divisional charts in Vedic astrology and sidereal astrology, we have these divisional charts, and one's called the Navamsha. It's the D9 chart. And when I started to understand the math behind it, the divisions of 9. Then I even keyed into what Nikola Tesla said. When you understand the meanings behind the numbers 3, 6, and 9, you understand the workings of the universe. Vedic astrology does this. It takes all of these divisions and it is so mathematically perfect. One of my books, I call it Astrology, the Divine Order of the Universe, because of the numbers and the patterns. Everything is in divine perfection and order. Numerically, that's everything. And like these 18 year periods and the 9 periods and 3, all of this comes down to the divisional charts that we work with in Vedic astrology. This is why it's so predictive and so precise. So to answer your question, my answer is absolutely. It's all in divine order, in numbers, and the sacred geometry. That's what it all essentially is.
Yeah, at this point in the conversation, when they're like, you're watching the Matrix and you see Neo and the code's all vertical and green and black. It's almost like the code is actually spiral in these like astrological patterns. The interesting thing in there is if it is all, and I think I've asked you this before, but if it is all sacred geometry and it is all patterns and it's all patterned out, it really feels kind of fixed and set. And then you also mentioned that, writing this book could potentially, like your intention is to potentially support an aversion of events that, we could mitigate in some ways. How do you reconcile it's all patterns, it's all going its own way, it's destined, with what elements of free will do we have in there?
And that's why no astrologer can ever be 100% accurate. I believe that if you have an astrologer that's 75 and possibly 80% accurate, it's as good as it's going to get, because we do have free will. We can break out of these patterns. But is it easy? Absolutely not. Once you get the ball rolling and it's going 100 miles an hour, there's hardly any way to stop it, right? So that is why 80% of the time it will be correct. But we do have free will. Some of the greatest seers said there is nothing more powerful in the world than the will of man. And I'll tell you who said that. One was Edgar Cayce. You probably know who he was, one of the greatest mystics of all time. Another one was Swami Sayuteswar, which was Paramahansa Yogananda's guru, said that the will of man. So Yogananda, his chart said something to the effect that he was going to be married a number of times. He burned his birth chart and said, I am going to take control of my life. And of course, he chose the enlightened life to become a seer, to become a saint, to become a guru, and he changed his life then. So the way that we can overcome the formulas that are set into motion is through our spirituality. It is the only way. It is the only way. So the way that we can do it is conscious awareness and working on ourselves spiritually. Otherwise, everything is going to play out the way that the charts and the horoscopes, the numbers, everything predict. But we do have that gift. If you want to call it in Christianity, I don't know, you can call it the forgiveness, and all the different religions or spiritual practices. There has to be this way to change things, to change ourselves, because otherwise we're nothing but a bunch of puppets playing out a play with a script that can't be changed. We do have the ability, but the only way is through awareness, higher consciousness, and that comes through our spiritual journey and search within to connect, to change and shift the future and life. And you know as well as I do, well, here's how I look at a birth chart. The birth chart is everything that we've ever been in our past life. So, people go, oh, this is karmic. I say, no, everything in a chart is karmic because it's everything that we've been before. So we come back in these lives to heal all of our past karmas. And how do we do that? We first of all become aware of what the karma is that we're working on. And that takes looking at a birth chart to better understand it. And when you look at your birth chart and you better understand what it is you're here to work on and to heal, then you become conscious, aware, and you change the pattern. You change the whole karmic chain of events, because when we come into our lives, we kind of reenact everything that our parents set into motion. If there's addictions in the family, guess what? The kids become addicts, and so on down the chain. If the parents got divorced, then the kids usually get divorced. There's like this chain of habits and patterns that are set by the family or the heritage or the line of our heritage. But when we recognize and see what needs to be changed, work on ourselves, work on our relationships. So many people come in and they got a messed up chart for relationships, and they're like, does this mean I'm doomed? I'm never going to have a happy, healing relationship? I say no. With conscious awareness of what you're doing, you have to change yourself. You can't expect the other person to change, but you work on yourself, and then you change your vibrational frequency. You become more higher in consciousness, and then you start to attract different people on a higher level of consciousness, and you start to heal the patterns of what is in that chart. Therefore, the next time you come back, you don't have that same issue. But if you don't heal it in this life, you're going to come back and you're going to have to heal that same issue over and over and over again. It's like a dog chasing its tail. People don't wake up. They don't become conscious. They don't become aware. They don't work on themselves and change. And this is, 95, 98% of the world probably. But when people do, then they change and heal those karmas, and life changes. The future changes for them, and they don't have to reincarnate with the same messed up patterns that they keep coming back with. And, people keep saying, oh, I was born with this, I was born into a crummy family, a crummy life. It's their fault. And they don't take charge as to looking at what they have done and what they can do to change these patterns. That's why we're all here. And that's what I keep saying. That's what healing is. Becoming conscious and aware of who we really are, what we need to look at and change and heal. And astrology gives us this beautiful tool to see exactly what it is. But we have to do the work. We have to do the work to become conscious and aware and to heal it. And in doing so, we break those patterns. We break that karmic history, and we can change the future.
Hey there, Inspired Soul. I couldn't help but notice at this particular point that Joni's talking really deeply about your heritage and your ancestry and how to know more about it and how that influences who you are. Here at The Inspired Evolution, we're partnered with Ancestry.com. You can find out more information about your ancestral roots. I mean, it's pretty interesting finding out who you are and where you've come from and all the different lineages that you're actually carrying. What I'll put a link to in the description below is to access your DNA results. Also, we've gone ahead and used some health metrics and tools to have a look at your gene health and kind of what that does for you in terms of how genes express in your life. I personally found it quite profound looking at like 60% of people have this MTHFR mutation, which sort of impacts how they process folate and folic acid. Some people have MAO, like serotonin and dopamine receptors that have impacted. Some people process vitamin D differently based on the different genes they have. This is not something that Ancestry.com gives you, but the test results that you get, you can then take into these Inspired Evolution tools and understand your DNA better. That's inspiredevolution.com/DNA. And you can then take the results you get from Ancestry.com, which gives you all the insights into your ancestry, and then also apply that into your gene health and wellness and find out like how you should really be supporting your health. For me, it was profound. I was taking a multivitamin for the longest time thinking I was doing the right thing, but my multivitamin contained folic acid, and it's something that actually causes me brain fog and cloudiness. So understanding these results has been an absolute game changer for me. We've partnered with Ancestry.com. Use the link below to go get your DNA test and results, and there's a whole bunch of stuff, some exciting stuff about your heritage and also your health and wellness waiting for you on the other side. So go on, use the link below, get your results from Ancestry.com if you're interested in your heritage and your DNA and wellness. Well, I couldn't help but reflect on tying parts of the conversation we had earlier back in when you were reflecting on your parents and the healing they went through. Sorry to bring this back up, but and then that big based on their propensities, they fell back into their natural patterns, and it's like that free will destiny piece. It's like, yeah, you do have the conscious, and I mean, like I just tuned in so hard when you're like, it's your spirituality that gives you the opportunity to connect on the deepest level to your free will, to disrupt these patterns. Like that is incredibly profound to feel into. And one of the things that's present for me, I guess, at this point in the conversation is you talked about how, yeah, the karma in your birth chart. And I see karma as this propensity that we carry. There's actions that happen, and then there's a certain, we use the word sanskar, but like it's this propensity that gets carried in towards where things are likely to happen, unlikely to happen because of certain things. And that's how I see karma, I guess. It's really interesting because in Vedic astrology, they call it Jyotish. And this really just sunk in for me, like only like I've used the term my whole life, but it never clicked for me that Jyotish is Jyot and Jyot is light. And you're
Yes.
actually studying light. And that just, my whole brain just like, I stepped into a new paradigm as soon as I decoded this. It was like, oh, planets, stars, lights, earth, lights, our light, lights, the study of lights and the propensity of light and the karma and around all of that. I mean, it
You
was just amusing, but I wanted to sort of open it up with you here.
Yeah, you got it, because Jyotish it does translate to the science of light. And when you go back into the ancient Vedas, this is why we call it Vedic astrology, because in the ancient Vedas, there's the earliest reference to astrology. They mention the nakshatras. And in the ancient Vedas, the way that they're constructed is through hymns. So in these hymns, they use the body of man as a symbolic reference point. And so all of the different studies and divinities are part of the body. So such as the arms, I'm not quite sure which of these studies are what part of the body, such as I think the arms might be yoga, and there's different part of the body that's Ayurveda. But for the body of man, Jyotish are the eyes of man. And I thought that was groundbreaking, because what does that essentially tell us? It gives us sight, the light and the sight into the world to see the truth and to heal the body. But you're right, Jyotish means the science of light, and the stars, the sun, that all gives us light, doesn't it? It's amazing. Personally, I think astrology is the most sacred divine science of all. And that's why I choose to study it wholeheartedly.
I mean, I'm just sinking that in. I don't really know where to go from there. That is just like the eyes are so, because you sort of see this as well, the light of the eyes, and just even when you start to figure into like the technology that is eyes,
Hmm.
it's pretty ridiculous when you start feeling into that. It's really like, well, they're these, yeah, I mean, they're out of this world when you start to think about the technologies that your eyes carry. You wrote the book you mentioned 2024 to 2042. You mentioned that 2038 was really the energy around this stuff that's happening. I mean, it's incumbent upon me at some point to ask you, what do you think it is about the energy of Gemini, which is air, and then Sagittarius, which is fire, and then Mars being kind of this trigger? What is the dynamic between Gemini and Sagittarius that you believe, in terms of diving deeper into the energy of Gemini and the energy of Sagittarius? Can you explain them a little bit, and potentially why these cataclysmic events happen at this time?
Yes, I'm so glad you asked, because I thought, I'm leaving out a missing piece here. And here is the missing piece. In Indian Vedic astrology, We actually, what makes it truly Indian Vedic astrology are the 27 nakshatras. And so when you take all the 12 signs, or you take the whole 360-degree zodiac, and you divide it up. Well, when you're looking at the signs, there's 30 degrees to a sign, and there's 12 signs, but there are actually 27 nakshatras, and these are part of the Indian system, right? And the nakshatras are smaller divisions of the zodiac. So each of these divisions, since there's 27 of them, if you divide it up, that equates to 13 degrees 20 minutes of the entire zodiac, 27 of them. So that is a nakshatra. But what I feel like is fascinating is that the moon's movement per day is 13 degrees 20 minutes. And here in India, the lunar calendar is divided up where each nakshatra is 13 degrees 20 minutes. Therefore, this equates to the whole lunar calendar in India for the nakshatras. So you see how this order is even more divine? But getting back to your question, so there is a portion in Gemini, a nakshatra, that's called Ardra. And Ardra is right in the middle of Gemini. And opposing that is a nakshatra in Sagittarius that's called Mula. Now, here's what's fascinating about these nakshatras. Their meanings come from the star groupings that are within those portions of the zodiac. So these are actually the stars. And this is where it brings the stars into the meanings of the whole charts and everything. So it's whenever Rahu actually goes into Ardra, and Ketu goes into Mula, which is in Sagittarius. And let me explain these nakshatras. Ardra's symbol is a teardrop and represents sadness. And it's ruled by the storm god, Rudra. And it's like the storms, the violence, the tears, the sadness. That's that nakshatra. And the stars that are in that portion of the zodiac depict that. Now, going opposite to that, when you come to the nakshatra Mula, Mula is ruled by the goddess Nariti, which rules destruction. Is this starting to make a little bit more sense to you? So Nariti rules destruction, and Mula deals with this deep root. As a matter of fact, in the nakshatra Mula is the galactic center. And in the galactic center, we have more black holes than anywhere else in the heavens from our vantage point. Black holes suck in everything, and it's like really this huge destructive force. It's amazing. So this is why these placements are so relative to catastrophic events. Does that make better sense to you now?
It does. It really does. Thank you so much for explaining that. And yeah, I mean, also Mars is this kind of trigger energy. It's like at the minute you described that, I was like, Mars does kind of feel like that. It's really interesting. My wife asked me this question, and I found it very difficult to answer, which was like, why is Mars considered passion? Why is Mars considered, some people call him war? Why is it called why would you look at the planet and go, oh, it is like fiery, it's red, and so that symbology is there? Or do you look at the patterns that have played out when do you know where these energies get defined from?
That is a great question. Here is one thing I have discovered that's so amazing to me. When I went back and I studied all the mythology from Indian astrology, and I compared it to the Greek mythology, they equate to the same meanings. Where did that come from? It's like, for example, this is crazy. For Illa, Illa was the god in Indian mythology that could actually change sexes, could be a boy or a girl. And in Greek mythology, it's Mercury, and it's like a hermaphrodite, which is, both sexes. How does that equate to Mercury? And how did they know in India and in Greece, when they had no way of connecting to one another back then, that they assigned sort of like all these different meanings to the planets and the signs? I don't know, but I do know this, that Vedic astrology has been handed down by the great seers, the seven seers, the rishis. And actually, like there's different versions of Vedic astrology. And what I practice and teach the most is called Parashara. So that means it's been handed down by the seer Parashara. But there's also other seers like Jaimini, and there's different systems of it. But this has been handed down through oral tradition, and throughout the centuries and the ages, it remains the same, these meanings. Where does it come from? Essentially, I think from the divine. How in the world did the different astrologies come up with the same meanings for the planets with no ability to connect to each other back then? So to answer
Isn't
your
it
question, I
fascinating?
don't know.
Isn't it fascinating? Like it makes you really wonder, like, yeah, just it's almost, even it's deeper than Jungian, but the archetypes and the things that you see, but there's like so many archetypes, each star and anyway, I could nerd out with that with you forever. You added another 4 years after 2038 though to the book. So why does it go to 2042? Is it just because it was convenient to have 2024 and 2042, 2442? I'm sure there's more to it than that.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons, because I thought, oh, this is kind of cool, those numbers exchange. But no, you know why I did it? Because I wanted to complete an entire 18 and a half year cycle, going through all 12 of the signs, So I didn't want to leave one of the signs or the nakshatras out. I wanted to go through all of them to see what historically has happened before, therefore what will happen again.
It does. And just as you bring the 18 and a half back into the frame, I couldn't help but reflect on like just what I was like at 18 and a half years old,
Yeah.
and just what a particular moment in time here in Australia, that's the rite of passage age.
Exactly.
And then what, life felt like at, 36, 37,
There you go.
these 18 and a half year cycles, they do seem to be quite large, significant milestones in the individual's life as well, do they not?
They absolutely are, because each time you're going to have Rahu and Ketu return to where they were when you were born. And I always tell my clients that this is a time that we're being reminded of what our purpose and destiny is in life. So it's not a bad thing. It's a time that we are reminded of this. And it's like 18, it's really funny, Emery. I used to go to my son's school, high school, and teach astrology to the high schoolers, in their psychology class. And it was actually a Christian school, but they had me every year go teach astrology. And I wasn't going to sit there and bore them with planets and what they mean. That's exactly what I tuned in, because these were seniors in high school. And I said, there's this special cycle that takes 18 and a half years, that every time you go through this cycle, your life changes incredibly. And I said, and all of them are kind of half asleep, they're just in school and they want to go home. But I said, now, how old are you? And they were all 18. I said, what are you about to experience in your life? The biggest change ever. You're leaving home. You're going away to college. Your whole life is changing dramatically. And that's the power of numbers and cycles. And that is what astrology is. So that's how I explained astrology to the high schoolers concerning that 18 and a half year period, or in cycles. It's all cycles.
Inspired Soul, if you're loving this conversation on astrology with Joni Patry, you're also going to love getting your hologenetic profile from the Gene Keys. It's also based on your astrology, but it combines the wisdom from I Ching and also some human design elements. But it's really beautiful in terms of how it can help you unlock the wisdom around your life's purpose, your deepest relationships, and your relationship with yourself. And also in that constellation of your hologenetic profile, your business offerings, your career and opportunities and the work you're here to do, and your brand and stuff like that in the world. The Gene Keys has been an absolute blessing in my life. I'm a Gene Keys guide myself, certified. So I'll put a link below. We have this opportunity for you to get your free hologenetic profile using the link below, thanks to all my work as Gene Keys guide. And I'd love to offer that on to you if you'd like. So go get your Gene Keys hologenetic profile. It's not the same as your astrological chart, but there are many similarities, and it's a different way to digest this information based on the wisdom from the I Ching and human design as well. And I think you're going to love it. I mean, it's something really deeply to reflect upon. I mean, because in Western astrology, and this comes back, I guess, to the book Eastern Astrology for Western Minds, and this is probably where this question sort of lies. In Western astrology, there's this real passion around Saturn and Saturn's return. Every time Saturn returns, it's such a ruling sort of. You mentioned this earlier in the podcast. It's such like it's got this sort of disciplinarian life 3D kind of energy around it. But then what you're referring to is like 18 and a half years Rahu and Ketu sort of return. So could you call it a return? Am I using the right terminology? So are the cycles somewhat like, do they, the Eastern astrology and the Western astrology, do they kind of link in, or are they're slightly different based on the models?
No, it's the same. It's the same exact thing when a planet returns. So, we have all of our planets in our chart return, such as Jupiter returns every 12 years. And, but, the inner planets, like the Sun, Venus, and Mercury, they go through the whole zodiac once a year. So, but they do return, to their starting position where they were in your birth chart once a year. Mars is every 2 years, and Jupiter's every 12 years. Saturn is every 28 to 30 years. So when a planet returns to where it was, it's like Saturn will conjunct Saturn. And depending on where your Saturn is, like if it's in the third house, for example, let's say you have your natal Saturn in your third house. The third house is about education, learning, and traveling and writing. When Saturn returns, it's going to reactivate what its purpose is in your birth chart. So it will reactivate. You'll probably end up going to school again. You'll probably start studying different things. Maybe you'll get closer, or you'll separate from a sibling, because that's what the third house is about too. So it returns and it reactivates its position in your birth chart. So it drives me crazy when everybody freaks out about Saturn return, because it's really not a bad thing. It's like where you're being reminded of the evolution of what your Saturn's all about. And Saturn, let me tell you this, you much rather have Saturn as a friend in your chart than an enemy, because Saturn gives you your just rewards. And that could be a good thing. Saturn goes for longevity. People that have a great Saturn in their chart, the second part of their life is much better than the first, because they're mature and they're ready, and it keeps them going longer and stronger. Saturn is duration, Saturn stability, Saturn is discipline and focus. What would we do without Saturn? We'd be a big mess all over the place. No structure, no form, no discipline, no reward. And so essentially Saturn's karma. But what is karma? It's not bad. It can be good karma too. So my point is, a Saturn return depends on how your Saturn's placed in the birth chart, but it also depends on your level of maturity and what you're willing to do. Saturn is a positive. It's a powerful planet, and it can be the best if you play your cards right. So Saturn returns a good thing, in my opinion, but it's Saturn to your moon that's never all that great. That's the tough one, and that's called Sati Sati. Sati Sati is, and actually that means 7.5 years. When Saturn is in the sign of your moon. So here's what the stipulation is. Sati Sati means 7.5. So every time Saturn comes to the sign before your moon, the sign of your moon, and the sign after your moon, that takes 7.5 years. But when Saturn's in a sign for 2.5 years, so when it is in the sign of your moon, that's the worst. Not before or after. That's real subtle. But when it's in the sign of the moon, Saturn is hardship and Saturn can be endings. And I find that almost everyone that goes into Sati Sati will have problems in their marriage, difficulties in relationships. And it's like if anything, let me put it this way, if anything is not working in your life and you've kind of pushed it down and pretend it wasn't there, it's going to come out during the Sati Sati. You're going to have to face those issues dead on, completely, and work on it. And it's never easy. So that's my take on Saturn.
Joni, there's so many, like, let's just run with musicians as an example. Yeah, we've got Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison, Kurt Cobain, Amy Winehouse, I mean, Avicii, Steve Gaines, Jimmy McCulloch, hip hop, what I grew up on, Notorious B.I.G., Tupac Shakur, Lisa, like, you've got all these people that check out between
Right.
27 and 30.
Right.
Like, is there something to do with their, like, they're so creative in their expression and flair? Like, what is that? Like, that's that Saturn's return period. They made it. They didn't make it past their first Saturn return.
I have two theories on that. One is that they won't change or grow up. They want to stay stuck where they are. They will not, they don't want to grow up and change, because you've got to admit, people in their 30s are far different than people in their 20s. That's the turning point. That's where you reach your maturity. But there's something else in Vedic astrology that answers the question to that. And that is that certain planets come to their maturity at certain years. And Mars's maturity is age 27. That is one of the main reasons. People don't know this.
What does that mean? Mars's maturity comes to age at the age of 27.
Yes. So when Mars or any planet comes to its maturity, it comes to its height of what that planet is in your chart and for you. And Mars can be destructive. Mars can be war and anger and violence and, being destructive. But, there is a positive to Mars, of course, because Mars is energy all by itself. That's why I call it a trigger. It's this energetic force that when it hits something, it creates an event always. But if you're living life too fast, too furious, too competitive, it can cause accidents, and it does rule sports and competition. But really and truly, let's get real about this. I know this world, everyone is competitive to get ahead, to be better than everyone else. But that's not the real spirituality. To be better, to compete, to try to beat out everyone. It's really about coming together and us all coming together and winning together. Not that you have to be better and have more than other people. That's kind of that competitive edge, which is kind of part of this dimension in this world, but it's not part of the spiritual world of unity. Does that make sense?
It really does. And I couldn't help but reflect on some of the themes of Aquarius kind of back where we started the podcast. It was like this, I've heard from a few teachers and maybe even yourself when last time you were here, it's very much this Aquarian energy is different to the Piscean energy. Piscean energy, kind of this schools of fish, schools of thought, like a lot more coalescence and cohesion. But with Aquarian, it's not that it's not collaborative, it's extremely collaborative, but it's like I fully honor the I in order to fully honor the we. Like, it's this really interesting, it's a very different paradigm in many ways.
You're absolutely right. And when I think about Aquarius versus Leo, opposites are completely one and the same. And that's kind of what you said with the I and the we. That's very, very true. So the opposites are kind of, in essence, they have the same energy. But when I think about the constellations of Aquarius and Leo, if you look at the constellation of Aquarius, it looks like a big cloud. And that's because there's so many stars in it. It represents humanity, the group of oneness. But when you look at Leo, you're looking at that one star Regulus, which is the king. And the ego and the king, and everything revolves around the sun. But that's the difference between Leo and Aquarius being the we and Leo being the I, and the king versus the masses of humanity. But Aquarius has its good and bad qualities too. Aquarius, in my opinion, can be one of the most stubborn signs of the zodiac. Taurus gets that rap, but trust me, it's Aquarius. Because Aquarius can be so stubborn that they don't even talk about it. They're just so high and mighty and above, and usually they are smarter than everyone else. I'll give it to them there. But they're so elevated in being so right, and they won't even talk about it. It would lower their energy. So they just look at us as lowly, dumb people and just move on. But other signs such as Sagittarius will argue till they convince you of their way being, it's like my way or the highway. But we have all these hilarious really stipulations about the signs. But Aquarius can be very fixed. It is a fixed sign. And think about it this way. It is fixed air. What is air? And people think Aquarius is water, but it's an air sign. Air is communications. Air is the intellect. It's the mind. It's the thinking process, our communications, and it's fixed. So what does that tell you? They're not going to budge with the way they feel about things. And they come off as being so intellectual, which they are, that you can't even approach them to kind of shift their mind and awareness. But other signs are more fluid, but this is a fixed, and that's why I'm saying we're going into the age of Aquarius, where there's going to be a lot of fixed minds that are stubborn. But yes, we will advance technologically like none ever before. This is going to be an amazing catapult into awareness and consciousness as we go into Aquarius. And Aquarius in Western astrology is ruled by Uranus, but Uranus comes from the sky god Uranus, who is above all and is, the thinker above all. And that's where a lot of this evolved from, whereas Gaia is the earth below, but Uranus was the sky god. And what's fascinating? When you look into Vedic astrology and the nakshatras and the gods that rule the nakshatras, you're going to find that Varuna is like the sky god in all relative to Aquarius in all of this. So you find all of these connections through the myths, through the nakshatras, through the signs, through the planets. It's all interconnected, and it's just the most amazing study in the world. It's the most fun, I'll tell you that much.
I mean, I'm having fun. I literally could do this conversation with you all day. Like even just where we started with like Leo and Aquarius and like the dispersion and and even just when you went into like fixed air, like my mind started going into, and it seemed so technological. Do you know what I mean? It was like, how do you even fix air? And then it's like, whoa, like interconnected nodes and like the internet kind of does. Anyway, man, talking about digesting all of this, we don't have to just sort of wait for episodes from you to come out. I downloaded your Galactic planner. Really awesome tool, plug straight into Gmail. I know there's an iPhone version. There's some really helpful stuff going on in your world. Did you want to share with people some of the cool stuff you got going on?
I love it because here is you can see my love and dedication to astrology. It's everything in my life. But I wanted to make
sorry.
I know. I'm ridiculous. But I wanted this to be available for everyone to understand daily, using astrology that's what it's for, to use it every day in your life. And I go back into the story with my son who, he used to put in his phone all of my predictions so he would have them to live by daily. And one time I gave him a prediction that he was going to meet the girl he was going to marry. Well, he laughed at me and thought that was ridiculous. But guess what? It happened on that day. And he had it written in his phone. He met this girl. They fell in love. I don't know how you fall in love at first sight, but they did somehow. And they talked all night. And then at the end of the night, he says, by the way, my mom's an astrologer and she told me I was going to meet you today. And he showed her the phone where it said it. So, so he says, Mom, what if we could do this for everyone? Would that not be the coolest? And he's an entrepreneur, by the way. He's a smart kid. And he said, let's make this available for everyone. So I put my nose to the grind and I wrote out every description, every planetary transit that a person could have through, throughout whatever. And we even have now something brand new in the planner. So what the planner does is it's going to take your chart and it calculates your Vedic chart and it figures out all the transits to your planets in your natal chart, what days they happen. And I wrote all the down-to-earth descriptions. And, you don't have to know any astrology to understand how to live by the stars and use these predictions for each day. But now we have an added feature that took over 10,000 write-ups, by the way. We've done the dashas. So in Vedic astrology, we have this incredible predictive tool called the dashas. And they are based on the nakshatras in Vedic astrology. It's just coming out now in the next few days.
Oh, this is exciting. Okay, I'll put a link to the Galactic Planner in the description below for people to go check out. And I'll also put a link to the suite of your books as well, because, man, you're prolific in your creation as well, and also your YouTube channel, because I also really dig the length of your YouTube videos as well. They're about 20 odd minutes, 20 to 30 minutes, and it gives you, like, when you're in the middle and you're flying between things, I don't know how intentional that is, but it's been perfect. Like, you're in the middle of things and you can just quickly get an update monthly, weekly, like it's just perfect. So I mean, like I said, Joni, I could literally talk to you forever, but we've got to wrap it at some point. I mean,
you're a blast to talk to as well. We're having fun.
For those, I guess, for us, for the next year, we started with the 3 eclipses that are going on through this year. I think the message that I'm taking away is there's going to be a lot of turbulence in the washing machine, but things will settle and they will come out clean on the other side. Is that a fair summary?
Perfect. It's going to turn out great. I promise everyone. I know everyone goes, boy, you talk about gloom and doom, but hey, it has to come out to it. It's all evolving the way it's supposed to, and it's got to come out this way. Yeah, we're going to go through a big events, and I'll be talking about it on my YouTube as we go. But I see on the other side, things are going to be better. This sort of has to purge and come to a head. Do you know what I mean? Before the healing can come together, and it will, and it's going to be great. I know this is going to happen. I'm giving it 1.5 years, and everything, that's not that long. Everything's going to be coming together. You'll see.
Joni Patry, thank you so much for your time and energy and sharing yourself so abundantly here with us today. Thank you.
Thank you. You're a magnificent interviewer. You pulled it all out of me and you asked the right questions and you're amazing. Ketu, Neptune, you are going through one of the most spiritual transformations of your life. You're starting to dig deep. Yeah, because that's what Ketu and Neptune are all about. And they're aspecting the sun. Mm-hmm.
It's really interesting that more astrology is coming to the fore at this time as well for me. Like it's not been lost on me that I do feel like I'm putting down some roots. I mean, yeah, like I've had a lot of loss recently in terms of my dog, family members, and it was all sudden.
Ketu's loss. So that's why you're going through that.
But it's also been like, I don't want to say this out loud this way, but in a really like dense kind of way, really transformative, like my relationship with death. Like I'm now like looking at astrology. Like before there was this kind of it's life affirming to focus on life. But now it's like, no, you are going to leave at some point. Let's study this, like studying Buddhist scripture and the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Egyptian Book of the Dead. And like people are saying there's like more of a heaviness around you, Amrit, which I appreciate. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know, there's a gravitas that's being developed. And I trust that, the lightness will return. But I feel like I'm just in a period and in a phase.
You are. And once Rahu and Ketu change signs, which will be May 29th, you'll feel different. You'll feel not so heavy.
Interesting. Yeah, it's. Do you get this, Joni? Because I had this download when my dog passed. Give it 3 months, and actually, that will be exactly 3 months and 2 days after she passed.
There you go. That's.
Does your intuition click in around like your astrological work as well? Like, does that?
Sometimes it does a lot of times. Yes. It was weird yesterday. I gave this girl an example. I said Neptune was aspecting her planets, and I said, well, and it was in her 6th house of health. And I said, this means you need to get a different opinion whenever you get sick or anything happens, because you'll get misdiagnosed very easily. And I said, such as the doctor will tell you that you have strep throat, but you don't. I was just using that as an example. And that girl goes, how did you know that? Yesterday I went to the doctor and he told me I had strep throat, but I didn't. And I was
like, what? So
I just
trippy.
That. And she says, I said, I don't know. It just popped in my mind. That's what psychic stuff is, when it just pops in your mind out of nowhere.
It just arrives. There's a lot of Scorpio in my chart. The depths that Scorpio goes to for stuff.
Yeah.
My God. It's just infinite. It's just an infinite. Talk about black holes. Like the thirst is unquenchable, is it not?
Absolutely. Never ending.
It's profound. It's profound. It's so epic. You inspired soul, you made it through to the end of another incredible episode. I'm so inspired by your inspirations to evolve. It is such an honor to be your brother walking this path by your side. You obviously made it all the way through to the end and liked this video, so please do give it a like and a thumbs up below. It helps sharing this content around the internet by you just doing so. I want to take a moment to thank all of you that are subscribed to this podcast. As I like to say, everything you see around here is powered and empowered by your subscription to this channel. I cannot thank you enough for your incredible love and support. To all of you that haven't yet subscribed, please do take a moment. It's really easy. All you have to do is, as I'm saying the word subscribe, the subscribe button below is lighting up in the colors of the Inspired Evolution. Please hit that subscribe button, hit the bell notification icon. Episodes like this coming out twice a week to inspire your evolution onwards, upwards, and inwards. Join the movement spreading love, positivity, and wisdom around the world by subscribing. Thank you so much in advance for doing so. On screen now, your opportunity to dive in even deeper on your inspirations to evolve. I'll put episodes on screen with Pam Gregory, Rick Levine, and also Joni's last episode to dive in deeper into the conversation around astrology. So go on, take your pick, make your click, and I'll see you in the next one. I'll see you there.